sites in both Tecumseh and Cook? Answer by circling savings or maintain. So during the presentation tonight, you're going to hear information about what it costs to build and renovate, what it costs to upgrade our utilities, equipment, and you're also going to hear information about the savings that we get from each of those things. Question number 2, what is the maximum dollar amount you would support if asked to approve a general bond election? And your choices are going to be no bond, 5 million, 10 million, 15 million, or 20 million. So you're going to make a choice, just one. Third question is, what scenario makes the most sense? Circle one below. And the last question, what scenario makes the least sense? So what that basically means, is this on?
No. Turn them both on.
So what that means is
That's for me.
we are going to present several different scenarios. Believe me, there's probably 50, but we've narrowed it down to 6 that we're going to present on tonight. And at any time, the board could change and throw a new scenario out there. But I think up until this point, we've gotten to the point now where we need to think about numbers of some kind that associate back to certain action statements. So, got that baby going? You're on. Okay. Again, my name's Galen Bolt. I am your interim superintendent, and we have. Do we have all of our board members here? We've got Teresa here. We've got Gail. Raise your hand. We've got Rebecca. We have Arlen. We have, we said Gail. Who else we got? Oh, Kim had to go out. She'll be right back. And I guess I didn't see Justin. But thank you to our board members for being here tonight. They've already heard this information at last Wednesday's board meeting and helped me kind of sort through how to maybe make this information a little more understandable because we've got a lot of information. And I'll explain the format of the sheets that you have. But we have Russ Coe with us also. Russ is the consultant we have made a contract with to study our facilities. Russ was the director of operations for Fremont Public Schools for 20 years, 34 years in that business, and Russ has done this a lot and is working with other communities now. I know he's working with Decatur Herman. He helped the North Bend Central Schools as they worked through an issue to improve their facilities, and we're very thankful to have Russ working with us. Yeah, there's Kim. So Kim, another board member here. So thank you for being here. The best thing we can do is share information. I will promise you that we've put a lot of time and effort into giving you the best numbers that we can that match back to costs, expenditures, and savings that can be expected to be realized from our different scenarios. So again, those 4 questions, we're going to want to have you select one of those. We'll tally up the results before we get out of here, and we'll move on. And we have a similar meeting tomorrow night at the Cook Gymnasium, and we will collect information from both sites, put those things together, and have that available for the next board meeting. And Ann, if you're nice to me, I might even give it to you. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to take that down. I don't want you to just be looking at that here all night. And let's look at that sheet that's called Pros and Cons Summary, expenses, and savings. Sorry, Marcus, I'll try to remember to stay here by the microphone. We're streaming to our friends in our communities also. So I want to try to do this in a way where they're going to be able to understand what we're discussing and some of your questions. We have a microphone that we will bring to you if you have a question. So I don't know that I really know the best way of doing this. I think we just take questions as they come along. But the first scenario you see there in that sheet that you have, the information in scenario 1, you see expenses $4,889,350, a 5-year savings of $104,783. Now, I'm going to do this just for the first scenario. And after that, I'll let you do what you want to compare those different sheets. The spreadsheet of scenario 1, is that a purple sheet? Is that the top one? So the summary that I have up matches the spreadsheet on scenario 1, the purple. And about halfway down, you'll see expenses, $4,889,350. And then down below that, you see a 5-year savings of $104,783. Now, what we've done in scenario 1, we have implemented upgrades on HVAC equipment. And on the spreadsheet, you see the numbers, the specific numbers that go with each of those upgrades. That's the information that we got from Russ and his work with mechanical and electrical engineers. That simply gives upgrades in the utilities and HVAC systems at both Cook and at Tecumseh. So when you look through those things, you add up what all those different things are that we would need to purchase to implement scenario 1, and you get $4,889,350. Below that, you see a savings, an annual savings of what is that, 20,000 some hundred, which translates into 5 years worth of 104,783. That is the savings expected from the implementation of lighting and HVAC, those utilities, just because of the increased efficiencies that we would get by implementing those upgrades. Okay. Does everybody understand how to interpret the results here? Any questions about that from anyone? Now, we could spend a lot of time tonight going in the weeds, and I guess we will if you want to, because as we move down the road, you're going to see some other sheets. You're going to see a sheet that says this one gives you $222,000 worth of savings. I've got a spreadsheet we can look at that actually looks at each one of the line items that shows where those savings are. On the information you have, you just see a lump total. So if you have a question about those things, either we'll go through this together tonight, or if you want to stop into the office or give me a phone call, I can itemize each one of those things for you. Now, I want to emphasize, up until this point, we have only been doing a needs assessment. That is, what do we need regarding facilities at our school? So, there's a lot of different ways you can look at working with the facilities that we have. If this board were to, at some point, want to do a specific bond election, you wouldn't have all this information. You would have one scenario, and we would do the best that we could to educate everybody about that one scenario. So, just like always, we're talking about projections, and we feel very good that we have as good a handle on the projections of expected expenditures and savings as possible, given the circumstances that we have in each of the buildings. So that's kind of the format that I want to start with here before we get too far down the road. So, and again, there is absolutely nothing that this board wants to hold back in terms of, well, we say this is the number, but we ain't going to tell you how we got that number. That's not the way this works. So we'll spend as much or as little time as we want. Because in essence, that pros and cons summary, if all you want to do is look at that sheet, it gives a really good summary of what each one of those scenarios means. So between moving back and forth between the spreadsheet and the pros and cons summary, you get an idea about what the projected expenditures and costs, savings costs are. Okay, so we're going to move on from scenario 1, and we're going to go to scenario 2. So scenario 2, moving all pre-K-12 education to the Tecumseh site, but maintaining the Cook site for the Career Academy concept, incorporating the upgrades. Now let's talk about what that means a little bit. From the get-go, we've kind of decided that the Career Academy concept is pretty important. We all said that from the beginning. The fact is, it's pretty expensive as well. And the spreadsheet that says if we want to use that Cook site, we have to renovate that welding lab that's there, we have to renovate the construction lab, and if we're going to do HVAC and electrical, we would renovate the old gymnasium into a facility that would house those academies. Now, not only that renovation, but you got to have equipment. And I promise you, if you want to do the robotic stuff and really get into the artificial intelligence learning, which is what those programs go into, the starting price tag for that equipment is $192,000. I included $300,000 in the equipment category for maintaining an academy concept at the Cook site. Now, to tell you the truth, you're going to see that same $300,000 in almost every one of these scenarios, because no matter where we go, that is the cost of the equipment. So to just tell you how this thing can change real quick, if we decide, oh man, that's too expensive, we're not going to do those academies. That takes $300,000 off this right now. That takes renovation costs off this as well. What we have put together for you is, let's just say, the most damaged scenarios that if we really wanted, because we believe these concepts are great, but we also know some of those, especially Career Academy concepts, can be expensive. So those numbers you'll see when you get into that spreadsheet and you see some of those specific things. This maintains the Cook site for the Career Academy. It would not maintain the Cook site for any of the other PK-12 education. You see there the expenses, $6,337,192, and the 5-year savings is $1,867,445. So by not shuttling kids, by not having the maintenance utilities expenses, by reducing personnel, because when we move to one site, we reduce by one administrator and most likely one other support staff. We're not going to speculate on, well, who is that and how's that going to work? The fact is, those are just what happens when you move to one site. The board's already decided that we would not be doing a reduction in force if we moved to one site, but we would certainly, when the opportunity arose because of either a retirement or somebody moved to a different school, that we would look at those opportunities for reduction in force. Because when you get to one site, those gives you the opportunities then to be more efficient in the use of our staff. Right now, we have I think 5 different staff members that drive back and forth between Cook and Tecumseh. That's one period loss for each one of those teachers. So are you losing half a teacher just because we're driving? So the efficiencies, that's where some of those savings come from that you see. Okay, scenario 2, any questions? Yes.
So to save on utilities and maintenance, I don't understand how that saves. Are you decreasing the size of the school over there?
You're not using that school. Except for, oh, go ahead. Yeah, use the microphone.
My question is, how does it cut back on the cost of utilities and maintenance if the Career Academy is there? Or does our school district own the Career Academy, or is it in affiliation with Southeast Community College?
Our school will own that career academy no matter what.
So on cutting down the transportation, is the Career Academy basically for high school students?
Yes. I'm sorry.
How do they get to the Career Academy and back?
Shuttles. Doggone
So that's
it.
not really saving transportation costs.
Okay. You're looking at scenario 2.
Right.
You see a shuttle elimination, $37,582. The savings,
Oh, yes.
because we're cutting back.
But we're still shuttling kids from Tecumseh High School to the Career Academy.
Yes, and that is figured into this.
Okay.
That is figured into this. If you flip the page over one time in scenario 3, you're moving everything to one site and you're not going to shuttle kids. Your savings is more, $56,879. So that $37,582 figures one shuttle in the morning, one shuttle at noon, and one shuttle at evening for the Career Academy.
So students are taking several Career Academy classes or just one?
That would be the HVAC electric, the welding, and the construction. And another thing about that is the figuring of scheduling, very tough to do. And if you see on the pros and cons sheet, on scenario 2, you see a potential additional one staff member.
Okay, so if a staff member loses one period traveling back and forth.
Nope, that one wouldn't. That one's a hired to stay there.
But I mean, the student would be losing one class period also shuttling back.
Yeah,
and
probably.
forth. So how do they fit in all of their required classes?
We don't know. That, and what you're identifying is some of the challenges of having two sites, even when you're including that shuttle. Now, I can tell you that when I was working with the Nebraska City Schools, their career academy for that program was right in town, but they still had to ride back and forth. So it would be over a noon hour type of arrangement. So we would probably have kids simply eating at the Tecumseh site no matter what. But there would definitely have to be a factor, a certain amount of time there. I mean, it's a 15-minute drive no matter what. And then you got to get ready for the drive, and then once you get there, you got to get. So there is a definite, put that in the con category if you want, about this one.
Well, it just seems like the high school students should be wherever the Career Academy is.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed, I looked, and how many high school students are there? Like 9 through 12?
9 through 12, 476. Oh, high school students. Yeah, we're 476, I think, K-12, so 140, yeah.
And Nemaha Valley had 195 students their last year there, so it just seems to make sense that if the high school students were in Cook at that facility and the Career Academy is there, like the number of students and the fit for the building seems right, and the majority of the students would be here in K through middle school would be the bigger amount of students.
So your scenario, another scenario would be keep Cook for the high school.
Right, if the Career Academy is there.
Mhm.
Well, and, yeah, I mean, that seems to.
Okay, all right.
Then there's no transportation time lost for students or staff.
Yes. Okay. Other questions? Let's move on to 2. We identified some things in scenario 2 that were good to talk about. In scenario 3, and I'm going to put that summary sheet back up again, move all PK-12 education to the Tecumseh site, including all Career Academy concepts, incorporating all upgrades. So in this one, you would have all PK-12 education on one site. Now, you've seen the pros and cons on each of those. We haven't really talked about them yet. But let's go through each of the pros for this, which is basically the first one that you're looking at that moves all pre-K-12 education to one site. First of all, the pros: savings realized through transportation, utilities, and staff reduction. Not elimination, but reduction. Transportation efficiency is improved. Staff usage efficiency is improved. Staff development and collaboration opportunities are improved. Repair costs at Cook reduced. Now I say reduced because we're still going to be using that gym. And that's still going to have a shuttle for sports shuttles. But it would be reduced. Career Academy concept can be fully implemented in existing high school. So those numbers that you saw in scenario 2 for renovating that lab at Cook, well, you renovate the lab at Tecumseh because there's one there. And you make it CENCAP ready. Same dollar amount. You renovate the construction lab, same dollar amount. What you don't have is that HVAC lab, so you'd probably have to build on some additional square footage for that. But you could still do some of those Career Academy concepts with facilities right here at the Tecumseh site. Now also remember, there's lots of other career academies that we have that's going right now. Dr. Boone's teaching a med terminology class right now. That's for our health academy. Those kids are getting credits in medical terminology for Southeast Community College that they can use if they go into nursing, if they want to be a doctor. Those credits are good. They're earning credit right now. So we do have the academy concept right now in our current school year. Another pro: shared equipment allows for the development of academy skills at middle school level. So if you have a thing going at Cook and you have a thing going at the high school, and you want to prepare your kids for advanced study wherever that high school is, what are you doing with your middle school students? Are you helping them develop the skills necessary? Well, if you are, you're probably going to have to duplicate equipment in some fashion. Probably not going to need all of the biggest and the best that those career academies would, but you're still, with one site, you are able to nurture both sides of that learning curve, the initial and then the advanced. Central office upgrade is needed. Okay, Lori and Lisa, no, lost her. Who's our part? Lisa Schuster and Julie. That's a special education class that's out there in the trailer. I call that a trailer. I tell you what, I've asked people what they thought the first thing that comes in their mind when they come up to the school and they see that. You don't want to know some of the words that they talk about. And I don't know what you think when you see that thing when you walk up to school. But you got rid of one of those because it had mold in it. Is it raining Wednesday? Is it supposed to rain Wednesday? Get a chance, stop up. You'll see the towels on the windowsill on both sides. You'll see some water starting to come into the carpet there. When you walk in the door, you'll see not the mold, but the water stain that seeps up. We got to do something with that, folks. We do. That space that we need, I called Scott Wieskamp from Lincoln Public Schools because I knew Scott worked with portables all the time. If you get a new portable, every one of them costs you $115,000 to build. That's 2 classrooms. Another $20,000 to hook up. So you see a cost of $260,000 in there for mobile, and that is 2 new mobile classrooms, one of which we would use for a central office. So that cost is in there, starting with, well, no, it was back in scenario 2, I believe. But that's one of the line items. It's just so you know why that's in there. We have to do something. We cannot be in there again next year. So, I mean, whatever else that means, that Rick's going to boot a couple teachers out, or John is, and we can get a room somewhere that's accessible to the public for central office and those kids. Okay, high school, middle school, and elementary opportunities for student contact, support, and learning are enhanced. We talked about the simple things of if you got a high school kid that can help in just a foreign language, Spanish class, and you've got middle school kids that need some help, or as it is now, 4th and 5th grade kids. You get them all on one site, now you have opportunities for student contact that you don't have with 2 sites. So we just believe those efficiencies are improved. Administration, all available at the site where all education occurs. So even if you have that career academy at Cook, are you going to let that thing run without an administrator or supervision? I mean, that's probably not the safest thing in the world, doesn't make the most sense, and that running your administrators back and forth, you're losing time and energy with that also. So we saw that as a pro also. More pros, safety concerns reduced. You will have improved security at existing high school and elementary. You have additional staff not necessary through the use of current staff. And that's that Career Academy thing where I said if you use that one, you'd probably have to hire someone. And this particular renovation, I don't know if this uses, does this one use the renovation of the, no it doesn't. So that last bullet, auditorium renovation equipment could be used in future new construction. We're not putting new auditorium in this scenario. This is just getting everybody to one site. So that one actually is not a pro for the scenario 3. All right, moving to the cons. The Cook site is closed except for the gym area, which would still need maintenance attention. Now, folks, I think that's going to be an issue if that building closes down in some issue. So that is on the con side of moving to one site. We still have transportation needed for sports shuttles. Maintenance is reduced at Cook, but it's not eliminated. We're going to still keep those gyms because we would need that gym. Moving all students to 2 existing buildings at Tecumseh has challenges. And what I mean is space challenges. Because you're going to take kids and you're going to bring them down here, and we have to figure out where does the space come. And that's why those 2 additional portables were put in. I'm not sure that's enough. But that's something that is an issue we'd have to deal with. Central office would be an added expense that may not be needed in future years. So those 2 portables that you buy, if you put $260,000 into that, and you do something different with new building, you know, what are you going to do with those things? Because when you get rid of them, you almost give them away, according to what I've talked to other administrators. Wrestling would need to be in the elementary auditorium. If we're coming to one site, and we're not going to use that old gym at Cook for wrestling, because that's where it's at right now, we'd put it in the elementary auditorium. John Rother has assured me that would work. Okay. Or when I was here in the 80s, we used the cafeteria. So we'd have to spray the disinfectant before we ate lunch, you know, and just kind of just put up with it. Costs of a con is the costs of all upgrades, renovations, and new construction. Let's don't fool ourselves. That is the downside, because you're going to be paying for upgrades, renovations, and new construction. Yes, question. Well, get the mic over there to him.
What's the life expectancy of the portables?
The life expectancy of the portables, I'm going to guess, would be probably 10 years.
How old are the buildings we have now?
The ones that we have right now, they were built in 1947. No, I'm kidding you. I don't have a clue. They were brought in. Who knows that answer? Oh, Nick, what about it? Now, but they were not new. So they drove to Colorado to get those portables, and they were older then, so that was 2002. And I would suspect that, you put $115,000 into a portable, you're going to have a pretty nice portable. But again, that's money you're putting in, and how long you're going to use that. Other questions? Okay, let's move on to scenario 4. Now, this is the first scenario in which we have new construction. This is new construction. So this opens up a lot of things for us. The expenses are $19,245,600. 5-year savings, $1,179,180. Let's go through the pros and cons. But I tell you what, before we go through the pros and cons, if you look at that sheet that has the spreadsheet, we have in the number for the new elementary the maximum size, $13.5 million. That includes a beautiful, large gymnasium. You'll also see in the notes, you could do a minimum size elementary for $8.5 million. So you got $5 million right there you could be working with. So when you look at this information, please understand that this is just the best preliminary information we can give you. Russ, what's the information based on? Can you come here?
I've been working with architects out of Lincoln and Omaha, and they're using that off of what they do in Omaha and Lincoln. So we are just using what their class sizes would be. Yours would be smaller, but we wanted to give you the best so that that's what Tecumseh needs. That's what Johnson County Central needs. But we want to also build it off of your class sizes. So you got to have a little wiggle room, and their cost may be a little bit higher, but you don't want to shortchange yourself. That's the one thing I've learned at Fremont. We built elementaries, and if you shortchange it, you always shortchange yourself. So somewhere in the middle, that's where you'll find what you guys really need. But we haven't gotten into the weeds yet. So we gave you a very nice, big elementary that could fit where you have property. So that's how I came up with that number. But we do have a much smaller elementary that would fit the needs. It would make the spaces tighter. And in today's world, I don't know if you want a real tight space for kids. So, but that's up to you.
Thanks, Russ.
You bet.
So again, remember the flexibility that you see within these pros and cons. Let's just look at the pros of scenario 4. You have a beautiful state-of-the-art elementary built, adding to the efficiencies and the aesthetics. Again, when you build from scratch, you have the opportunity to think of things like geothermal heating. You have the opportunity to put fiber in the most efficient way. You build a playground next to these things that is absolutely the way it's supposed to be done. Not the way it ends up when you're just, well, here's what we got. We just got to kind of make it work. This would use ground that the school owns on the east side of the football field. Okay, everybody with me on where we're talking now? So that would be developing that land into a brand new pre-K-12 or 5 elementary. Now, to tell you the truth, in my mind, that could be a potential solution for central office also. Might be able to get rid of one of those portables. The fact that you might need classroom space if you're not going to build on, because this scenario does not include adding on to the high school. It does include renovation of both the elementary into a middle school and the high school, remaining as it is. So it includes all those upgrades, all those efficiencies. So after the beautiful new elementary, this scenario best meets the current needs of programming and facilities within the quickest span of time. On the spreadsheet that you see for scenario 4, if you go down, you're going to see a number, I believe it's about 1.9 million, or is it 1 point, for renovation? 1.1 million for renovation of the existing high school and the elementary. That renovation includes an auditorium renovation. So you would go into that where the elementary building is. Now remember, that gets renovated into a middle school, but you've got a nice auditorium right there. You renovate that with new stage curtains and new stage equipment. A lot of the rest of that's in pretty good shape. This is the first scenario that gets you that auditorium. The rest of the innovation or renovations simply become things to improve your safety with the entrances, improves some of the aesthetics for both buildings. Third bullet, savings realized through transportation, utilities, and staff reduction. So we're still saving those shuttles. Transportation shuttles are eliminated. With scenario 4, you're no longer taking down folks to the Cook site because you've got a nice gymnasium that you can use for some competitions, especially the one that maximum size. That is a really nice gymnasium there. Staff development collaboration opportunities are improved. Repair costs at Cook are eliminated because now we don't use that gym. Now I know down in the con side, that is a big con that we're not using, that Cook facility, even for the gym. The Career Academy concept fully implemented in the existing high school. Shared equipment allows for the development of academy skills at middle school level. So these are all just repeat pros from the prior scenarios. So I mean, there's really no reason to go over those. Let's look at the cons. And as you notice, in each scenario, the pros go up, the cons go down. All right, one of the cons. Why did I keep the Cook site open in scenario 4? Anybody know?
I think we might have missed that one.
I think I missed that one.
Yeah, I think the next one we missed. I think we talked that if the gym was still needed for other programs and for use of it, we could use it.
Yeah. The notion of what to do with wrestling would still be something we'd have to think about, but again, back in scenario 3, we moved wrestling down here and used either the elementary auditorium or we used something, we just made it work. So I'm sorry, those two cons, the first one would be the Cook site is closed, and the rest of that would go away. And well, okay, wrestling would still need to be in the elementary auditorium. Once again, a con is the cost of all upgrades, renovations, and new constructions. Central office, that might not be a con if you put that over in the new elementary. I believe you would still need to keep at least one of those portables, maybe 2, just for classroom space, because we haven't added on any classroom space yet. Okay, questions on scenario 4?
In scenario 3, you have roughly a savings of $1 million at maintenance at Cook. That was not put into scenario 4.
Say it again, Dave.
maintenance at Cook,
Yes,
savings over a 5-year period of $1 million.
yes.
But it is not added into scenario 4.
That's because,
School, so you've got those utility costs now are used in that new school, so you don't have those savings utility cost wise, and you also have to have a custodian that's cleaning that school. I'm sorry. Kim, thank you. Those savings that were realized by not having custodial at the Cook site and the utilities that were powering the Cook site now are being used at a new elementary. So savings then aren't realized, not nearly as much. You're now putting that custodian and your utilities are being used at a brand new elementary. So that's why the savings aren't as much that way. And that was a hard one. Galen and I talked quite a bit. I just want to make sure that when you open a new school, you have to have a staff person dedicated. You want to keep that school just as clean, if not cleaner than something. And then you got to have utilities for it. And that's sometimes schools don't do it. You hear about Omaha and how they're building new schools and how are they going to staff it, how are they going to do all that. We put those savings back into that school. So I hope does that make sense? Okay.
Dave, I would also say that while we didn't put anything in there for savings, I think you could very reasonably expect there to be savings. You have a brand new building. So what kind of repair costs are you going to have at the new building as opposed to what we would have had at Cook? All of the efficiencies that get built in. So again, a number to put in there for speculation. We didn't think it was fair to our public to put one in there, but we believe there would be some savings in there.
Probably about 30%, 35, 40%, but I hate throwing a number there and then it doesn't show up.
Okay, any other questions for scenario 4? Yes, Rick, right here in the front row, second row. Right here.
My question is, do we still own the Cook school then? And if you had closed it, don't we have to maintain it then?
Well, it's a great question. The question is, would we still own the Cook school? The answer to that is yes. And wouldn't we still have to maintain it? That answer would be up to what our Board of Education says we should do. If we don't have students there, financially, it would make no sense to maintain that. It would cost, Russ, how much would it cost to tear down that facility?
50,000 square foot would be somewhere in the $250,000 range. And that's catching me off guard, but probably $250,000 at least.
It'd probably end up being more.
It probably
because of the
would.
asbestos
Right,
disposal.
yeah, exactly. That does have a lot of asbestos. So I was just figuring the square footage cost.
And I do think that figure should be in here too,
Yeah.
for demolition, if that's what you plan to do.
That's a good catch, yeah. We didn't know what would happen to it. We thought that there may be a person out there that would look at that as being a good health wellness for this area. I don't think you guys have a YMCA. You know, people got to look at what's going on in communities, and there may be a potential buyer out there. We found that in Fremont. We had 10 elementaries. We ended up selling some property, and they ended up turning around and made it for profit. So there is potential. Not sure in this area yet, but you would think that there'd be a potential for a buyer. So, but you're right. We can throw that in there, and I can find out more accurately. But there is a lot of asbestos in the floor in that building.
And because I know my brother's in demolition construction, and we have to find a place first.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
I don't want to paint the gloom and doom for that Cook site. That gym and 8 classrooms over there are as good as you can get. I mean, they just are. But the efficiencies, I hope everybody's looking at the efficiencies of savings by moving to one site. Those are not insignificant numbers. Those are pretty good sized numbers. So, A decision about moving to one site for the efficiencies and the stewardship of savings, that's a real challenging decision. And if we were to decide to move to one site, we would have to redouble our efforts to try to find a use for the Cook facility. Now, it would not just be something, well, let's lock the door and go away. But quite frankly, I tried to give that building to Southeast Community College to have them use it for training, and then they take care of the maintenance. I tried to give it to Educational Service Unit number 4. They're not interested in that, does not meet their needs, it's not in the right locations. There could be other industry that could be interested in that. We would not simply say, well, that's over. We would want to put in a search for some type of use. But if we're not using it for our own students, putting maintenance into it, and maybe the board would choose to put minimum maintenance in there for a while to continue that hope that someone might use that. Because you can't just shut it off and then expect to have it still be in good shape to sell to somebody or have somebody else use it. That's certainly one of the cons, no doubt about it. The cost of what? Of demolition? Well, yeah. Well, I told Southeast Community College they could use that for a career academy and use that for their purposes and whatever. But they already have learning communities or outreach established in Plattsmouth and in Nebraska City and in Falls City and 4 other places. So no, they're not interested in that. So I guess I wouldn't just say done deal. We would continue to still look for things that might be available that might make sense. Okay, scenario 4, any other questions? Shall we move to scenario 5? Okay, scenario 5, it's building that new elementary, so you'll see some of the same costs in there. Renovating the current elementary into a new middle school, renovating the high school, incorporating the upgrades. So that part is exactly the same as scenario 4, except this includes building a new addition between the current high school and elementary. Let's look at the pros. You get a new state-of-the-art elementary. You got a state-of-the-art addition of classrooms and a competition gym. So that between the two buildings, that would be your competition gym for your high school and middle school. So immediately, if you did that, you'd certainly reduce the gym you're building over here in the elementary school. So you got kind of a thing you're working with there. Same pros all the way down. Staff development, repair costs, maintenance costs, career academy, shared equipment, central office upgrade. Now you don't need those dang portables. Get rid of them. Administration safety concerns. Wrestling, volleyball, and basketball practices and competitions all at new site. This is the first one where you've really taken care of what you're doing with your athletes at one site. The one thing, Russ, I think in this one we did put additional cost of $2.7 million for a brand new auditorium. In all those other scenarios, you renovated the auditorium over in the elementary building, and you had a really nice auditorium there. Well, in this one, when you do this, although I guess you could still use that for the auditorium.
We just were looking at another way.
We put another scenario in there about a brand new auditorium at $2.7 million. So out of that $22.446 million, once again, that is the most damage in terms of maximum amount you would be asking for. Could be played around with, could be reduced. The cons, well, back to this cook site is closed, and obviously the cost of all upgrades. Every time we move into a new scenario, we gain a couple of pros, and we lose some of those negative effects. Questions on scenario number 5?
Dr. Bill?
Yes.
I was just wondering, so on this.
Get the microphone over here.
So in both this scenario and the previous one, we're building a new elementary across the football field.
Yes.
How do we handle lunch? Is lunch all going to be back in a specific building, or would lunch be also served over there?
Great question. Lunch still is prepared at one site right here, transported. We would still have the need of a kitchen and serving over there, but we would not be preparing food there. Prepare food here.
So you wouldn't be moving kids?
No, there would be no movement of kids to come to a facility. So that would have a lunchroom, commons area, and it would still be different here. Kim, get up there with the microphone.
So in all of your renovations and upgrades that you're talking in the high school building, is that including just for students things? Because our lunchroom and cafeteria here needs some renovation.
When you start getting into if we would build between the buildings, we looked at doing a brand new kitchen on the main floor with a brand new commons that would serve both buildings. And there's an old drawing done by DLR that we're looking at. Nothing definite has happened, but that's something that I looked at because of what you have existing in your kitchen and your commons. So that to me was a need, is brand new kitchen common space for your district. So that would be in 5 and 6, and I don't know if I hit it over in 4. That is not in 4.
Did that also look at chemistry and?
Oh, sorry.
Did that also look at the science room?
Yes, yes, it did. When we start doing the addition, that is science, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, we looked at yours very closely. Yep.
I'm not sure you know the answer to this, but the old elementary or the elementary school over here, when was that built?
1931.
So we would be replacing a building that was built in 1968 and 1997 with the 1931 building. And I thought that there were things that building needed lots of work on that I don't think I see listed on here.
We are on scenario number 5. Okay, so what we're doing is we are keeping the 1931. We're going into it, we're taking all the windows out. We're putting all new windows. We're going in and there's going to be some renovations. I don't know what those renovations are. I put a number in there so that if it's a middle school, that the smaller rooms turn into larger rooms, just depending on how we configure that. So it gets upgraded with that, all new HVAC, all new lighting, corridors, flooring, carpet, safe entries, and so forth. When we do the connection between the two, there'd be an elevator that serves both buildings so that we'd have that ADA accommodation. The auditorium then would be converted because on this one, on renovation number 5, we do have money available to do a new auditorium, so the old auditorium could be converted into other space used for middle school, depending on what they want. We haven't even sat down and talked to it. We're dreaming right now. So, yep, yes, yep.
The cost of which line item is
Okay, the cost of the windows, let's see where we've got that. That would be, I think I included that in the, oh, not seeing. Yeah.
let's take a look at this one. It's not in your sheet, but scenario 3, please add line item renovation to high school elementary to include high school wrestling multi-purpose room. If we did that at 325, and then the renovations, that includes new windows in elementary, new secure interior and exterior doors in elementary and high school, upgrades to auditorium, including lighting, sound system, curtain, and acoustic treatments, main facade entry upgrades to elementary and high school, parking lot and exterior upgrades, interior upgrades in high school and elementary, 1.197 million.
Yeah, it's built into the numbers.
Which numbers?
I don't know where you put it in your
I
spreadsheet.
don't think it's in there.
I'm just looking. Yeah,
It is spread out.
Spread out.
Okay, I see lighting, fire alarm, intercom, HVAC,
See, that's when we went to
welding,
the small-
construction, it's
Yeah.
not in there.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So that's scenario 5. So it would be fair to say that you could, that 2.7 million for the auditorium, the new auditorium, that's safe to keep that in there. You still have the old auditorium renovated for that 1.197,500. You see that? So you got 2.7 million for a new auditorium. You see that in scenario 5? So if we didn't build the new auditorium, that is still, I mean, you got an extra million 6 in there.
But either way, you still need to do the renovations in the old elementary, and they're not in here.
Yeah, that's the renovations that we just read.
The windows and
Yes.
the doors.
Yes. I tell you what, cross out 2.7 million and put in 1.1975.
Yeah, that new auditorium really should have been the renovation part of it. It just got listed incorrectly. It should have been the renovations in the elementary for renovations of auditorium and the building. It just got mislabeled.
Okay, thanks.
And so that should be a smaller number
Yeah,
than
that
2.7.
yeah, that total should have dropped by about $1 million, I believe. There were so many scenarios we were going back and forth on Friday that
Sure, and again, I guess the important thing to remember about this one, it puts a new building between the high school and the elementary. And that's a significant number there.
correct. The elementary would still have a gym, but it would not be nearly as
Well, when you think the smaller size is 8.5, the largest one is 13.5, you could go in there about anywhere you want.
yeah. We put it somewhere around 40,000 square foot
Yeah,
for that.
we put $11 million in there for it.
Yeah, instead of 13, instead of
But
8.
that could be reduced.
Yeah.
Other questions on scenario 5? Well, then let's go to scenario 6. And, this is kind of one of those that you can say, well, if money weren't an issue, this is what we do. We wouldn't even think about it. Because this tears down the old elementary, gives you new elementary across the way, still renovates because we've got good space here in the high school, and then builds completely new for middle school and additional classroom spaces, including the high school or the competition gym and whatever additional classrooms that we need. So, all of the pros, to tell you the truth, the pros are the same as back in scenario 5. It's just a matter of the expenses. This one is a $24.5 million expense. Still has savings because of those upgrades in there by moving to one side of $1.179 million. So again, this is while everything else was a lot of upgrades in utilities and efficiencies by moving to one site, and all the other scenarios were a lot of renovations, and we only got into some new construction in that scenario 4, is when we started going across the way to build a new elementary. And as each scenario grew, then we got into more new construction and less renovation. Okay, just questions in general. Yes? Get a mic up. No, don't start talking until we get that mic up to you.
Question for Russ. Okay, between scenario 5 and 6, using the existing 1931 structure with the renovations versus tearing it down, starting new, if you're looking long-term, 40, 50 years, what is the answer? What differences, downfalls, pros and cons do we have in that scenario?
Great question. So the simple answer is the building is 1931, and traditionally schools have about an 80-year life, so we're there. However, many historians will say that building will go 100, 110. The structure itself is fine. It just was designed for education in 1930. Straight in line rows, high ceilings, no acoustics, not energy efficient, and so forth. So today says tear it down and build something for today's education. Then that new building will go 80 years. Again, it will go. And you will not have the maintenance, because anybody that owns a building or a house from 1930, they're great. I've owned them. But they take more maintenance. They cost more utilities, and they are more troublesome. And if you're a teacher in a 1930s building, which I've been, they're a little bit, they kind of dictate the curriculum because of the size. And you'll find teachers like me that would leave a window open in the dead part of the winter because it's too hot. And when it's air conditioned, the windows were still open because it just wasn't getting cool enough. So you're trying to bring some fresh air in because kids get stinky. So, you know, if money isn't an object, you tear an old building down. And that's what some people do.
Looking 20 years out, we've done 5 years, but 20 years out, is there going to be a whole lot of difference cost-wise when you consider?
It's considering that scenario, looking forward 20, 30 years, are we at a break even then? If tearing down old and building new?
Yes, actually after about 15 years, because of the repairs, that roof then is going to need redone. Your HVAC that we're putting in it is going to be looking at needing redone. Are you in a place that the middle school is serving correctly? No. You've got a high school that was built in 1965, so now again you're looking at an older facility. You're looking at parking problems right now. The community, you know, again, I also look at long-range planning. It should be looking at purchasing a 40-acre site and starting to save up money to build a complex that's pre-K-12 and looking at 25 years down the road and saying, this is when we need to build a new pre-K-12 for the community. You guys are going to have a new business come in that's going to bring some families, and things are going to start happening, folks. And you're not that far from Omaha and Lincoln, and people are going to be looking for a nice bedroom community that's got great schools. And you want it for the kids. I mean, as a parent, you want it for your kids. You want nice facilities for your kids. Costs money, and death and taxes, and today's the tax day, and it hurts to write those checks, and it hurts when property taxes go up and farm. You know, that's why I've been so careful, because I do feel for what's happening out in the agricultural. So I try to keep those dollars down, looking at where you're at right now. So can we wait until that gets better? I don't have that answer. My crystal ball's a snow globe, and you shake it and it changes. But the buildings don't change. They get older and older. And like a car, and the wheels are going to fall off. So they're fine now, but until somebody comes in and says, well, wait a second, it's not meeting today's fire codes, life safety codes, it's not meeting today's educational needs. So there's the answer, is this what's best for the kids?
Russ was talking about some architectural work that was done. This is the football field. This is the existing parking lot. This is the existing high school. This is the existing welding and construction labs east of the high school. This is the existing elementary. And in between these buildings is space for classroom and a basketball court. So this is basically what we were looking for in scenario 6. This was proposed to the Tecumseh community in 1996. This is the drawing, the actual DLR drawing from 1996. This isn't something we just made or had Russ do with a current architect. That was actually proposed in 1996. Tom Rother was superintendent at that time. Now, obviously, this community said, well, we didn't need it. Well, we're 20 years later, 22 years later, and we got the same daggone design up in front of you. And we're outlining some reasons why it is a need. Not a want, but why it is a need. The only reason I say this, there's all kinds of reasons we come up with why it is now not the right time to do it. Wasn't the right time in 1996. And we're still here. And obviously there was a merger, and we gained some nice classroom space in those gymnasiums, but that was a need then. And it's ironic to me that we came back with exactly the same thing that was proposed in 1996. Okay, other questions? Because we're going to vote here in a little bit. Yes. Oh, Mike, get here.
Would it be possible for you to do a student count for the last 5 years and the projection for the next 5? Do you have that available?
Yeah. Now, when you say available for the next 5, I don't know how to figure that.
Well, I would like to know, well, okay.
So, can you see that screen? And let me get this bigger. Okay, so these numbers in 2009 and 10, that is a pre-kindergarten number, 51. So then your kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So 266 total in the elementary. And as you go across, these are all your elementary numbers. And if you look, 266 total here, 265. This is 10 years ago, and that's today. Well, let's go down and look at the middle school. So the middle school 10 years ago was 122. Today, 114. And you see some of those numbers along the way, they've gone down and gone up, but we're kind of at that almost same spot. So let's look at the high school. 140, 10 years ago, 144 this year. It's almost exactly flat. Now, the number that kind of throws off some of our thinking a little bit maybe, we include this PK. So that's pre-kindergarten. So you can be very proud as a community. You have supported early childhood education. You got a lot of kids that are involved in early childhood education. That is fantastic. We have a grant that helps to take care of that, doesn't take care of all of it. But in terms of where we are in just K-12, not pre-K-12, we're at that 464 number, but it's been pretty solid. Now, your other question was, what's the projection for the next 5 years? I'm not smart enough to know what's going to happen here, but I will tell you that there are some potentials for some incredible things to happen. At our April board meeting, we had a representative from Nile Corp here. Nile Corp is the mining company that's considering putting the operation out on the Elk Creek farm. The notion that that could bring a tremendous amount of job opportunities to our community. That's real in a potential, but to project that, boy, oh boy, I just don't think it's a good idea. What we can project is that our population probably is going to stay pretty solid, because it has for the last 10 years.
Okay, what year was it that Cook joined?
2007. So, John, help me here. What was this when Cook joined?
Enrollment JCC's first school year is 490. That's not including preschool. They invite them.
So it was 490 in 2007, which didn't include preschool. So it did drop some in those first 2 years. But since that time, it's remained pretty steady.
Okay, thank you.
John Rother is just a genius with these kinds of numbers. So, oh, sorry.
Okay, so this question's come up before, so what I did was I ran enrollment figures for a lot of the schools in southeast Nebraska since 1992-93 school year. The trend is in rural Nebraska, schools and communities are losing enrollment. Tecumseh Public Schools in 1992-93, none of this includes pre-K, was 436 students. In the same year, Nemaha Valley was 293 students. 2 years out of the merge, 05-06, Tecumseh was at 412 students. Nemaha Valley was down to 206. Between 05-06 and 06-07, a year out from the merge, the year before the merge, Tecumseh went down to 370, and Nemaha Valley went to 189. So a year ahead of the merger, together, that made us losing about 90 students together, something like that. It'd be 30, 40, it's about 60, 70, is that right? So that was the trend going into it. And so the first year of the Johnson County Central School District, we were at 490. As of March, with no preschool, we're at 478. So yeah, enrollment's down 12 students. I can tell you enrollment fluctuates quite a bit as kids go through the school year. Last year's graduating class, I believe, had 32 students graduate. I think during their time at Johnson County Central, there were a total of 78 different students in that class. And so out of the 32, you can figure 40-some fluctuate in and out. And why they stay, why they go, a multitude of reasons. So again, I ran numbers on lots of different school districts, Table Rock, Humboldt before and after their mergers. Obviously some of them had high points. Johnson County Central's high point was 1415. We're up to 514 students. But again, looking at just this year's senior class, we're going to graduate 42 out of 75 students that have been in that class at one point or another. And that's just, why did we lose, between 05-06 and 06-07, why together did we lose, what would be 42 and 16 students? I don't know. I don't know if that had something to do with one of the local businesses downsizing or people leaving the community or whatever. Then after the merge, went from that 370 and 189, which should be, what is that, 459 total? No, that's not right. 370, 189, 4. Anyway, you lose some more students after the merge.
Yeah, did you look at any scenario if that chicken plant would happen to move out of Tecumseh? That's a possibility, you know, that's big business.
Well, you bring up the perfect reason why it's hard to project. That's a huge business. And if it were to move out, it would have a huge impact in the number of kids we have and the support of our school. So, you know, there's no other way to answer that question than recognizing, yeah, to have a big impact. So the other part of that is, so what if they don't? And we continue to keep 460 kids for the next 20 years. And do we continue to not realize the savings by moving to 1.0? But fair point. Scott.
I guess one of the things I'd like to see was in your comparisons up there, when you put up 24 million or however many million, I would have liked to see what a 20-year bond was going to cost mill levy wise to valuation. That's a number that's missing, and it's probably a very important number when people are talking about voting. This is the actual number it costs if we do this many million. You can sit here and talk how many million, but until you transfer it into it's so much per mill levy right now, how many dollars does it cost per $100,000 valuation? That's a number we haven't seen.
Yeah. Well, again, we're talking into financing now. So but it's a fair point. That would be a good number. That'd be a good number to see. Yeah. Yeah. Other questions?
I was wondering about the football field. Would they be updating that, or would they be updating the concessions or the stands area since everything else is getting updated? Or would we just keep the same?
Those numbers didn't include any updates to football field. Now, did they include anything in any of the utilities for the concession or anything?
We haven't even gotten any information on it. It could. You know, those numbers that we got were for the needs that we heard at this point, but there could be money in there. We haven't even talked to the student population yet. So these were just on the needs that when I walked through the school and we saw what really looked like needed to happen. And when I looked at the football field and compared to other schools, that need wasn't as high, but it could happen. It's a good question.
Had you walked through the concessions bathroom?
No, not during the dead of winter. We did not do that, Marcus. So that could be a need. And the other thing that could happen is there are ways of phasing this. We haven't even gotten into that. We're asking these questions. That's why we're here tonight. This is an input session. This isn't telling you what's going to happen. We want to know what you think needs to happen. So this is great information. We appreciate it, really do.
You can give up all you want. This session was designed to give costs. That's what we were asked to do, and that's what we have done. We haven't talked anything about financing. And yes, there's a connection between what we would generate with a bond and against our valuation. But until we decide what this community wants, that's information that the board will have to think about, because there's more financing mechanisms out there besides bond issues. And if the community's only willing to spend $5 million on a bond and the board decides there are other things that just need to be done, then I guess you've got to start looking at some other mechanisms. But you always balance that back against good stewardship based on what our students deserve. There's no other way to say it. So those of you out there that want to give up on this process, that's up to you. But quite frankly, this is too important stuff to just simply say, well, you know, you didn't present enough information tonight, Galen. I'm sorry. We're real close to voting. Any other questions? Yes. Get the microphone. What's that? Well, what are we planning to vote on? Let me put her back up here. Yeah, there's 6 of them. So let me put that back up here. Let me put back up. I want to answer this one first. You've got here's what we're going to vote on. And for, I think, our Board of Education, this first one might be the most important one. Moving to one site represents savings. You can look at it about any way you want. But in all of those scenarios, it represents stewardship savings. So this is an indication from the community. Do we take advantage of savings, or do we maintain 2 sites? Because we can do that. We can continue to maintain 2 sites. Question number 2. What's the maximum dollar amount you would support if asked to approve a general bond election? The first one would say, well, I don't want any bond at all. But you know what? I would be willing to support up to $5 million. And then obviously that would transfer into a levy of taxation that would generate the $5 million. Or, you know what? I'd support $10 million. But looking at those scenarios, I know, let's say you want that scenario number 4, you know, I'd be willing to go up to that. Maybe they could reduce that one down to $15 million. Or I want to go to $20 million. So choose which one of those you think you would support. And then finally, which scenario makes the most sense and which scenario makes the least sense? Okay, does anybody not understand what that survey is going to mean and what you're going to give us in terms of information? Does that help clarify it?
Well, yeah.
Possibly. That could be building fund.
Not all that much difference in the last 3, so I give them up. And not all that much difference in the first 3. There's just little nuances on it.
Well, if you figure $3 million isn't too much of a difference, and then another, no, each individual. All right, so you'll be able to choose one. Does that make the most sense? Does 4 make the most sense? Does 3 make the most sense? So yeah, just choose one. And then the same thing goes for the least sense. Just one of those. Just choose one.
Dr. Bolt, we have another question.
Yes, where's the microphone? Oh, you got it, Dana.
I know this might be hard to estimate, but can you give us any type of estimation on timeline? For instance, scenario 2 can be accomplished by this school year, or scenario 4 or 5 could be accomplished by?
Good question. It would really depend on when that would go to the voters. You know, if we'd go out, for instance, next May or November, then after that, you have to have time for the architect to do whatever one of these scenarios. If it's the full-blown where we're doing the elementary and the addition, you've got to add at least 6 months onto that for the planning, bidding process. And then if it's an elementary, you've got to add at least 12 months from the time the shovel hits the ground till the time that thing opens. So project the date 2021, 2022, you know, you don't open a new school usually in the middle of the school year, but you can. So I don't have those projected dates because I don't know when you would take it to your people for a vote. But the sooner you do it, the sooner you get it open. One thing I would say with what's going on with the flood and the economy and some other things, every year you postpone. The number they use is 3 to 3.5% increase in cost. So that's always weighed, when I was doing stuff for our school district, it always weighed on me because they kept telling me to do it for less. So I would pound to try to get our board to get it done earlier. That was always my little thing that came up to me, and I always tried to keep it at the minimum. So I haven't even started working yet to get your things exactly the way you want it because there's so many things that have come up, so many needs. So it's a great question. 2021, 2022, somewhere in there.
Again, I think, Dana, at one time, you know, there was a thought, well, maybe should we try to put something in on a ballot early, like next fall? That probably doesn't make a lot of sense, especially knowing that we don't know where the legislature's going on any of the property tax proposals. I mean, there's still things out there that have a real potential to have an impact on the valuation of ag land, on just how schools are run. And then the concept of the Nile Corp people on what's going to happen there. I believe we're hoping there'll be a decision before very long that could give us some information. So the next place that makes the most sense if we're going to ask the people for some kind of a general bond would be of May in 2020. That is a general election, that's a presidential election, and that wouldn't cost taxpayers extra for a bond. And by then, we will know lots of things. And one thing we also know is that the cost of construction will have gone up. So, you know, the right time to do it, keep waiting, those are tough questions. And our Board of Education has thoughtfully thought of a lot of things. So right now there is no plan. Still kind of collecting information, and the information we collect tonight, quite frankly, will be very important. Yes, question.
It's not a question.
Oh, sorry.
As far as cost, I don't know how widespread the flooding is, but there have been other weather devastations in the U.S. and the tariffs, and I don't know how that affects the cost or the supply of building materials, but it might have a big effect as far as now rather than later.
Yep.
And the other thing I have to say is I disagree. I don't think it's about what we all deserve. I think we all deserve a vacation, but if we don't have the money for it, can't take one. And so I think that we do need to look at the costs, and I think the costs are equally as important, how much it costs us as how much it costs to do the project. So
You're never going to get me to agree with you on we deserve a vacation when we're talking about our kids. It's not what we deserve. It's what our kids deserve. That's up to the community to decide. But it's not about us deserving certain things. It's about our children and what they deserve. Again, our community needs to tell us that. Are we ready to do this? Yes, question.
On your scenario 3, where everything moves to Tecumseh site.
Yes.
What? I mean, obviously we're using 2 facilities now. Or 2 sites. What are you able to fit everyone realistically in here and do that?
If you look at,
I noticed one of your challenges that moving all students to existing buildings has this challenge of, I guess, what are the, like, is it even possible?
What's the realistic nature of being able to do that?
Yeah.
Well, we have 1, 2, 3 of the smartest building principals around and how they're utilizing their space. We have 2 additional portables that we put in for that. But I agree, that's an unknown. We don't have the specific layout about, well, this would go here and that would go there. That would certainly be a challenge. So that's the best I can do in those scenarios. I can tell you, though, right now, my observation. We have very small class sizes right now in Tecumseh at the high school. Now, all of the classrooms, I mean, they're all being utilized for the most part, but those classroom sizes are very small. Now, this is my own thoughts coming in. I haven't been working in this school for the last 11 years, and I know the programming that we have now. We're able to offer multiple sections of advanced coursework. It could be that we're not able to do that anymore, that we're just able to offer chemistry and physics, as opposed to some of those other things. But those would be the types of decisions you'd have to make if you were going to bring everything to one site. So, yeah, on the one con that was said, there'll be challenges in getting everybody on one site. Those are the kinds of challenges you just identified exactly, the things that have to be worked through. Okay, who has smartphones that you're able and ready to use? If you do not want to use technology to cast your vote, raise your hand. All right, kids, anybody, this. Okay, raise your hand if you need a paper pencil survey. Okay, now we are going to let our technology department take over. Now, I recently went to a conference, and I realized how old I was and how out of touch I was with what's going on in the classroom. Because one of the sections that I went to was called Freaky Fast Feedback. And the gal that was presenting gave all these applications that are free. I mean, it doesn't cost you a thing. Where you can do surveys like the one we're going to take, hit a button, hit submit, and your answer is right there. And once you've submitted your answer, we're going to see the results right here on the screen. So before you leave, you'll see the results. Now, here's what we're going to do. For those of you taking the paper pencil survey, just fill it out. Russ, you want to get that box, give it to one of the kids here, and fold it in half, and then our kids will pick that up, and then they're going to bring your answers down, and they're going to submit it on their machines. So we'll see. They won't know who's submitting what, but they're gonna enter your information. So how many machines do we have? Do you think we got it covered? Okay, so we might have to just count a few of them by hand and just manually add them up in our head once we hit this. But Karen, why don't you talk them through here?
Okay, so the website is just this menti.com, and it'll ask you for a code. What? Oh, it's too little?
www.menti.com.
Can you see that now? Okay, so just type that in. The code you need is 870041. For a username and a password. Did you go to menti.com?
Yeah, you're on the JCC Wi-Fi.
Don't be on the JCC Wi-Fi.
You're not supposed to be. If it's your
But
own
then you
phone.
have to authenticate.
Yeah, if it's your own phone, you should be.
On the first question, if you think moving to one site makes the most sense, you choose savings. Maintain means maintain both sites. So on that first question, if it seems somewhat confusing, which means we need to revise that before tomorrow night. Yeah, moving to one site means savings. Maintaining means keep two sites. Now, one of the reasons that I wanted to do that was so that you get a chance to see the kinds of things that are really available in the classroom right now. I mean, I was so out of touch with what can happen, and this is free software. So a teacher that wants to give some kind of an assessment, fires that baby up, gets the results back right now. All the class can see all the results. So how much of the savings of moving to one site balanced against maintaining sites in both Tecumseh and Cook? Savings means one site, moving to one site. Maintain means going to two sites. You got a little, so you can, we've got 30 that have entered their information so far.
Yep.
We got some paper and pencil stuff. Any other paper and pencil surveys?
Up there.
Sarah. Did we collect them all? I think we got all the papers. You are the first class. First trying this out. I know we'll make improvements. Do we got them all, what we have?
Got paper, I don't know about.
Okay, let's see the results. Okay, so in the first question, do we, the savings of balancing to one side, which you saw the savings, 33 folks in the audience tonight said, yeah, the savings make more sense than maintaining two sites. So we can translate that out in whatever the percent is, pretty high percent. Let's go to question number 2. Question number 2, what's the maximum dollar amount you would support? 27 said they would support a $20 million bond. Yes. Thank you. You wanted to vote? Just me. Got it.
That's just for me. You have to use both.
Karen, can you go back?
You need both.
No, use that. This is for him. Now you can use it. Which one do I talk into? Well, you're pointing at me. I'm okay. The first one, the savings. Thank you. The savings. 36 people in our audience tonight said they would support taking advantage of the savings, while 5 indicated that we should maintain 2 sites. Go to the second question. And this is the one about what is the maximum you would support if we were to put in a general bond. 28 people said they would support up to $20 million bond. 5 would support up to a $15 million bond. 1 a 10, 1 a 5, and 6 no bond. The third question, which scenario makes the most sense? 22 people said scenario 6, 9 scenario 5, 4 scenario 4, 2 scenario 3, and 4 scenario 1. And the final question, which one makes the least amount of sense? 32 said scenario 1, 2 scenario 2, 1 scenario 3, and 5 scenario 6. Now, first of all, I just think that's cool as the devil to be able to get results like that. That gives you a nice bar graph and kind of lets you see how people think after being presented and everybody hearing the same information. So, this is a small example of the kinds of things that teachers are doing in the classroom today. And the use of technology, I mean, it is incredible. It just is incredible. Well, that's the last. I had planned on trying to gather, and once again, gathering information. We're now at a point where we're gathering feedback about the costs. And please understand, we threw 6 scenarios at you. Those scenarios could be streamlined, they could be added on to, they could look differently. So truly fashioning from about $5 million up to $20 million. You could definitely put something together. So, Board of Education, anybody want to make any comment at all about anything that has to do with information tonight? We are going to have another one of these tomorrow night at the Cook site. Any one at all? Like to put you on the spot, you know. No, they're in there. Here's what happened, Teresa. The paper pencil ones were given to the kids. They all had devices, and they entered them. So, and again, that's all anonymous. There's no tracking back of who said what, but it all got in there. So, Kim Wellensack basically for the board said, thank you for coming. We're looking for input, and this is exactly what we want. We're the kind of information that will be helpful to us as a Board of Education. Teresa, Gail, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say this information is very helpful. Thank you, Russ, for all the work you are doing, and Dr. Bolt, and we just need to get this out to the community.
Very good. Ann, if you got questions, we can kind of talk a little bit later too. So, thank you so much for coming. Very important. Thank you.